place on earth by Tim Vickery. Chapter 1. 2 Ships. The race began in the summer of 1910. On June 1st, in London, a black ship, the Terra Nova, went down the River Thames to the sea. Thousands of people stood by the river to watch it. They were all excited and happy. On the Terra Nova, Captain Robert Falcon Scott smiled quietly. It was a very important day for him. He was a strong man, not very tall, in the blue clothes of a captain. He was 41 years old, but he had a young face, like a boy. His eyes were dark and quiet. One man on the ship, Titus Oates, smiled at Scott. "What an exciting day, Captain," he said. "Look at those people. I feel like an important man." Scott laughed. "You are important, Titus," he said. "And you're going to be famous, too. We all are. Do you see this flag?" He looked at the big British flag at the back of the ship and smiled at Oates. "That flag is coming with us," he said. "In the Antarctic, I'm going to carry it under my clothes. We're going to be the first men at the South Pole, and that flag is going to be first, too." 5 days later, on June 6th, a man opened the door of his wooden house in Norway. He was a tall man with a long face. He waited outside the house for a minute. Everything was very quiet. He could see no houses, only mountains, trees, and water. It was nearly dark. The sky was black over the mountains. The man smiled and walked quickly away from the house, down to the sea. In the water, a big wooden ship waited for him. The man got onto the ship and talked and laughed quietly with his friends. The ship's name was Fram, and the man was Roald Amundsen. The Fram was the most beautiful ship on earth, Amundsen thought. His friends were the best skiers on earth, too. One of them, Olaf Bjaaland, smiled at him. "North Pole, here we come, Captain," he said. "Yes," Amundsen said. His friends could not see his face in the dark. "Fram is going to the Arctic." Everyone on the Fram was ready to go to the North Pole, to the Arctic. Amundsen wanted to go there too. But first, he wanted to go south. His friends didn't know that. At midnight, on June 6th, the Fram moved quietly away from Amundsen's house, out to sea. Chapter 2. The Race. The Fram went to an island in the south of Norway. It was a very little island with only one small wooden house, 2 trees, and nearly 100 dogs. "Look at that," Bjaaland said. "It's an island of dogs. There are dogs in the water, near the trees, on the house, dogs everywhere." 2 men came out of the house. "Hassel! Lindström!" Amundsen said. "It's good to see you. How many dogs do you have for me?" 99, Roald," said Hassel. "The best 99 dogs from Greenland. And they're very happy. They don't work, they just eat and play all day. They're having a wonderful summer here." "Good, good," Amundsen laughed. "But that's finished now." "Hey, Bjaaland, stop laughing. Come down here and help me. Let's get all these dogs onto the ship." It was not easy. The dogs were fat and strong, and they didn't want to go on the ship. But at last, after 3 hours' hard work, all 99 were on the ship, and the Fram went out to sea again. The men were not happy. The weather was bad, the dogs were dirty, and some of the men were ill. They began to ask questions. "Why are we bringing dogs with us?" asked one man, Johansson. "We're going thousands of kilometers south, past Cape Horn, and then north to Alaska. Why not wait and get dogs in Alaska?" "Don't ask me," said his friend Helmer Hansen. "I don't understand it." The men talked for a long time. Then, on September 9th, Amundsen called everyone to the back of the ship. He stood quietly and looked at them. Behind him was a big map. It was not a map of the Arctic. It was a map of Antarctica. Bjaaland looked at Helmer Hansen and laughed. Then Amundsen began to speak. "Boys," he said, "I know you are unhappy. You often ask me difficult questions, and I don't answer. Well, I'm going to answer all those questions now, today. We began to work for this journey 2 years ago. Then, we wanted to be the first men at the North Pole. But last year, Perry, an American, found the North Pole. So, America was first to the North Pole, not Norway. We're going there, but we're too late." "I don't understand this," Bjaaland thought. "Why is Amundsen talking about the North Pole, with a map of Antarctica behind him?" Amundsen stopped for a minute, and looked at all the men slowly. No one said anything. "We have to go a long way south before we get to Alaska," he said. "Very near Antarctica, you know. And Captain Scott, the Englishman, is going to the South Pole this year. He wants to put his British flag there. An American flag at the North Pole, a British flag at the South Pole." Bjaaland began to understand. He started to smile and couldn't stop. He was warm and excited. "Well, boys," Amundsen said slowly, "do we want the British to put their flag at the South Pole first? How fast can we travel? We have a lot of dogs, and some of the most wonderful skiers on earth. Bjorland here is the best in Norway. So, I have an idea, boys. Let's go to the South Pole and put the Norwegian flag there before the British. What do you say?" For a minute or two, it was very quiet. Amundsen waited, and the men watched him and thought. Then Bjorland laughed. "Yes," he said, "why not? It's a ski race, isn't it? And the English can't ski. It's a wonderful idea. Of course. Let's go." Chapter 3. The Ponies. On October 27th, the Terra Nova arrived in Wellington, New Zealand. When Scott came off the ship, a newspaper man walked up to him. Captain Scott, can I talk to you, please?" he said. Scott stopped and smiled. "Yes, of course," he said. "What do you want to know?" "Are you going to win?" the man asked. "Win?" Scott asked. "Win what?" "Win the race to the South Pole, of course," the newspaper man said. "It's a race between you and Amundsen now. Look at this." He gave a newspaper to Scott. Scott looked at it. It said, "Fram races Scott to South Pole. We're going to win, says Amundsen." Scott's face went white. "Give me that," he said. He took the newspaper and read it carefully. The newspaper man watched him and waited. "Well, Captain Scott," he said at last, "who's going to win this race? Tell me that." Scott looked at him angrily. "This is stupid," he said. "It's not a race. I came here to learn about the Antarctic. I'm not interested in Amundsen or in races." Then he walked back onto his ship, with the newspaper in his hand. Later that day, he talked to his men. He gave them the newspaper and laughed. "It doesn't matter," he said. "We're in front of Amundsen. And we have more men and more money. He has only 8 men and a lot of dogs. I know about dogs. They don't work in the Antarctic. We have 16 men and the new motor sledges. They are much better. And tomorrow the ponies are coming. We need ponies, motor sledges, and good, strong British men. That's all. Forget about Amundsen. He's not important." Scott asked Oates to look after the ponies, but he did not let Oates buy them. When Oates first saw the ponies in New Zealand, he was very unhappy. Most of the ponies were old. and some of them were ill. "They're beautiful ponies, Titus," Scott said. "They come from China. They're wonderful ponies." Oates looked at them angrily and said nothing. Then he asked, "Where is their food, Captain?" "Here." Scott opened a door. Oates looked inside. He thought for a minute. "We need more food than this, Captain Scott. These ponies are going to work in the coldest place on earth. They need a lot of food. More than this." Scott smiled quietly. "We can't take more food on this ship, Titus. Where can we put it?" "But it doesn't matter, old boy. They're very strong ponies, you know. The best ponies on earth." Later that night, Oates wrote a letter to his mother. "There are 19 ponies on the Terra Nova now," he wrote. "All the ponies are in a small room at the front of the ship. We eat our food in the room under the ponies, so our table is often wet and dirty. Scott makes a lot of mistakes, I think. And Antarctica is a very dangerous place."